Linking the Connecticut Art Standards to Practice, Webinar 3. Thank you for joining us on this recorded webinar that will provide districts important information pertaining to the incorporation of the Connecticut Art Standards and the work of the model districts. I would like to introduce the voices behind this webinar. I am Dr. Melissa K. Wlodarczyk-Hickey from the State Department of Education. I'm currently the Reading Literacy Director and the Director of the Academic Office. Joining me today are Jill Goldberg. Jill was the K-12 Fine Arts Coordinator in the Vernon Public Schools and is currently an Arts Education Consultant. Angela Griffin. Angela is the K-12 Director of Music and Performing Arts in the Simsbury Public Schools. And Cindy Parsons. Cindy is the K-12 Director of Visual Art from the Glastonbury Public Schools. Jill and Angela led the model district work. The Glastonbury School District was one of the model districts that created and developed the largest volume and sequence of curricular work as participants in the project. In this webinar series, we will be sharing the work of the model districts. Jill, Cindy, Angela, and I have created this series to assist schools and districts in better understanding the history and background of the Connecticut Art Standards and Connecticut Arts model curricular work, building an understanding of the Connecticut Art Standards and the required instructional shifts to implement, and engaging in a process of creating standards-based curricula, instructional materials, and resources. This is webinar 3 of 3. The intent of these 3 webinars is to provide a dynamic professional learning experience. We have deliberately incorporated breaks into these webinars so that participants are engaging in the learning. The webinar will be paused for participants to complete meaningful activities. Therefore, individuals leading this work should prepare accordingly by analyzing materials and timing the webinars based on the needs of the participants. Please note that each activity will take about 15 to 30 minutes to complete. All materials can be found on the dedicated CSDE Arts webpage. As a result of webinars 1 and 2, you understand the history and background of the Connecticut Art Standards, have engaged in the standards to assist in building an understanding of the standards and the instructional shifts, began the process of developing a standards-based instructional unit using the unit template, and followed the model district process by identifying the unit to be developed, writing a brief description, and selecting the standards to be addressed. As a result of webinar 3, you will continue to create a unit of study by identifying the corresponding enduring understandings, EUs, and essential questions, EQs, writing learning objectives and outcomes. Please note, we will be referring to the NCAS website throughout this webinar, and you will be using it as a resource for your work. The NCAS website is www.nationalartsstandards.org.
As a review from webinar 1, the model districts engaged in understanding a 3-step process to build a foundation for curriculum development. Webinar 2 led us to begin the development of a standards-based instructional unit using the model unit template above, which is step 1 of the process. As mentioned earlier, all of the components included in the process are included in district curriculum development in some form or another. While reviewing the work of the model districts on the CSDE website, you will find samples of benchmark grade and high school proficiency level instructional units. To begin step 1 of the process, each benchmark level started the development of a standards-based instructional unit. Let's review how we define a unit here. A unit here has a defined outcome expectations with a sequence of instructional learning activities. These learning activities will lead students to attaining established learning objectives in order to meet the outcomes and can be assessed. The unit template, as is shown in this slide and from which you are working, is based on a UBD, Understanding by Design model or protocol, where first, learning goals are set. In this case, it will be the standards. Specific unit learning objectives are established to align with the standards. The summative assessment with rubrics is then designed to measure how and to what level students attain the objectives, and then, through backwards design, build the instructional learning activities, and resources around that.
This is an example of a visual art unit for grade 2, which was written as part of the CAST model unit project. This is a template used by unit developers and can be found on the Connecticut State Department of Education website. This is the sample that was provided in webinar 2 to provide you with the work from that webinar that was completed up to this point. We wrote a brief description of the unit, and then we identified and selected grade level specific performance standards that will drive the unit. Please note, the grade level performance standards that will be addressed in this unit include 2 within the creating process and 1 within the connecting process. Remember to try to include standards that reflect 2 or 3 of the artistic processes.
We move to the next section in the unit template, which is Enduring Understandings. Enduring Understandings summarize important ideas and core processes that are central to a discipline and have lasting value beyond the classroom, and they synthesize what students should understand in a larger capacity that will have longevity. They are the big ideas. Enduring Understandings are the whys. They are the big idea for what we want students to take away from their learning. The beauty is they're already there for us in the standards.
Please find the grade level specific performance standards that you have identified for your unit from the NCAS site. Next, find the corresponding Enduring Understandings that align with each standard that you have identified for your unit. Please select no more than 2 Enduring Understandings that additionally demonstrate some kind of relationship to one another and to the overall unit description. Why only 2 Enduring Understandings? Because if we want ideas to truly prevail, endure, or take away a big idea, any more than 2 will not possibly provide students with the understanding we want them to persevere. In continuing the unit development process that you saw started in slide 7, we've now added the Enduring Understandings that correspond to the performance standards that have been identified for this unit. Here, only 2 of the EUs have been selected to focus on. These are the EUs that more clearly align within the context of the unit. Here is the grade 8 unit that was shown as an example in webinar 2. That shows the corresponding Enduring Understandings for that unit.
Here is a high school music hip-hop production unit for grades 9 through 12 with the corresponding Enduring Understandings for that unit. This elementary general music grade 5 example shows the corresponding Enduring Understandings aligned with the standards.
We now want to identify the essential questions that align specifically with the Enduring Understandings you have selected. But first, let's classify essential questions as allies with Enduring Understandings. Essential questions stimulate thought, provoke inquiry, and spark more questions. They are not answerable with finality in a single lesson.
The next step is to find the essential questions that align with the Enduring Understandings you have identified for your unit. You will find there are several questions that go with each Enduring Understanding. Please select only 1 question per Enduring Understanding that once again speaks to the unit. Again, it is important to note that if we truly want and can expect students to understand and walk away with Enduring Understandings or big ideas and essential questions, we must keep those to a minimum. Our goal is that these are the why and purpose to the unit, and to define a clear, standards-based instructional unit. Here we can see the essential questions that have been identified for the grade 2 unit and how they connect with the EUs and standards. You will find that there are often several corresponding essential questions that align with each of the Enduring Understandings on the NCAS site. Please select only one essential question for each enduring understanding that also demonstrates a relationship to one another and to the overall unit description. Once again, we are promoting students' true understanding of enduring understandings or big ideas, along with essential questions as the major takeaway from the unit, the why and the purpose to the unit. Looking at the grade 8 model unit example, you will see the essential questions and how they connect with the EUs and standards identified for this unit. Again, keeping to only 2 enduring understandings and 2 corresponding essential questions that most align with the unit content will support deeper conversations and understanding of the big ideas being taught.
In this slide, this elementary general music grade 5 unit connects the standards with the corresponding enduring understandings and the essential questions for this unit. Looking at the grade 10 through 12 Madrigal High School Choir Model Unit example, you will see the essential questions and how they connect with the enduring understandings and standards identified for this unit. Again, keeping to only 2 enduring understandings and 2 corresponding essential questions that most align with the unit content will support deeper conversations and understanding of the big ideas being taught. This is a sample portion of the work previously submitted for this unit.
Now we move to learning objectives as the next step in the development of our standards-based instructional unit. Learning objectives, or learning outcomes, as many districts now refer, are clearly the most important component of an instructional unit. They clearly identify what we want students to know and be able to do. If we can't identify specifically what we want the students to know and be able to do, how will they ever know what they should know and be able to do? They should be articulated based on students' behaviors, and they must be measurable. We will now start to establish learning objectives that directly align with the standards you have identified to drive your unit. We begin by identifying the knowledge and skills that we find in our standards. Please highlight all of the nouns you can find in all of your standards in red or underline. Then highlight all of the verbs you can find in all of your standards in blue or italicize. I have included the beginning sections of a unit sample that I have developed in order to use as an example throughout the following slides and steps. Please note that I have underlined nouns and highlighted them in red for knowledge, and italicized the verbs and highlighted them in blue for skills in both the brief description of the unit and standard sections. You will see the value of this exercise as we continue. Please note the example for visual arts. I have provided a sample grade level 3 performance standard. I have highlighted the nouns as specified in the previous slide, and the same for the verbs. Below that is a sample of the section in your unit template that I have completed according to the performance standard. Please go ahead now and enter the appropriate nouns and verbs in the knowledge and skills sections in your unit template that you have highlighted in your standards.
Please note the example for music. I have provided a sample performing ensemble performance standard. I have highlighted the nouns as specified in the previous slide and the same for the verbs. Below that is a sample of the section in your unit template completed according to the performance standard. Please enter the appropriate nouns and verbs in the knowledge and skills sections in your unit template that you have highlighted in your standards.
Now we will add unit-specific knowledge and skills through both nouns and verbs that align directly to the nouns and verbs we have identified in the standards. We know that the standards are conceptual-based and do not include any mention of media, subject matter, specific content, as well as elements and principles, all of which are knowledge and skills for which we want all our students to know and be able to do. We will be aligning these important and crucial components to the conceptual ideas of the standards. Please see my example in the slide. I have used the same grade 3 level performance standard and included the knowledge and skills identified in the standards. Below that, I have listed the knowledge through nouns as well as the skills through verbs that are specific to my unit. I'd like to make a couple of notes here. First, several of the nouns and verbs I have included here for my unit came directly from the brief description of the unit, which is found on the sample on slide 23, as well as here in the middle section in this slide. And I have included verbs that came from the process components. You can find these placed vertically along the far left side of the standards in the visual arts section. Lastly, it's all right to repeat nouns, verbs that are included in both the standards and unit sections, as you will notice that I have as well. Finally, by aligning your unit-specific nouns and verbs to your standards you have established, confirmed, and substantiated a standards-based instructional unit. Once again, here is the unit sample I provided in the beginning of this section. Please note the nouns and verbs that were identified in the standards, and then the nouns and verbs identified in the unit description, and how they were applied in the unit template sample in the previous slide. Now we come to the most important part, which is actually creating and writing the learning objectives. Once again, learning objectives can also be considered, and most likely are considered, as learning outcomes in many districts. The essential understanding here is that we must be able to define what we want students to know and be able to do, and that learning objectives or outcomes are student-based and measurable. In fact, stay tuned for next year, as we will be showing you how to create summative assessments that will measure how well students achieved and performed to meet the learning objectives. As you will note in this slide, we have devised a formula to write the learning objectives from your highlighted nouns for knowledge and verbs for skills. Here is what you will do. Write corresponding knowledge or nouns and skills or verbs that you want students to know and be able to do from the unit. Combine the knowledge or nouns and skills or verbs to write the learning objective or outcome. Learning objective formula. Students will know nouns and be able to skills equal learning objective. Here is my example from the nouns and verbs I had identified for my unit. Students will investigate and demonstrate a variety of painting tools, apply a variety of painting techniques for personal ideas, demonstrate an understanding of spatial relationships in landscape, and interpret a variety of landscape subjects to select and apply to landscape painting. Please note I have begun the objectives by stating students will, because as was previously mentioned in the learning objectives, they must be student-based. They are about what the students need to know and be able to do as a result of the unit. And each of these 4 objectives is measurable. Once again, the next webinar will address assessment and how to create assessments with rubrics that will identify how well the students met the learning objectives.
Next steps. Look for follow-up webinars starting in the fall of 2019 to continue standards-based instructional unit and curriculum writing process. These webinars will include support in developing summative assessments, instructional sequence and learning activities, resources, repertoire, media materials, differentiation or modification, academic vocabulary, formative assessments, district scope, and sequence.
Thank you for joining us in this learning experience. If you have any questions, please contact me, Dr. Melissa K. Wlodarczyk-Hickey, Reading Literacy Director at melissa.hickey@ct.gov.